Welcome to another episode of the Doomloop Dispatch, the news show that covers the worst parts of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm Kevin L. Jones, and with me, whenever possible, is my good buddy
D. Scott Miller.
That's right. And today we're speaking to longtime blogger, the reporter of all things Emeryville, Brian Donahue. Brian Donahue has been a long-time East Bay resident, been living in Emeryville since 1982, and in 2010 he started blogging about local politics and news for his blog, the Emeryville Tattler, and it's gone on to really make some headlines and become a threat to the local city government because they're actually now trying to use government powers to block him from reporting. So we're going to talk about all this, especially Emeryville politics, because it's truly a laboratory for kind of what you're seeing now with real estate interest taking over local city governments to get whatever they want. And we're always interested in that because the impacts it has really affects entire communities. So hi there, Brian. Thank you for coming on.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. Absolutely. And I'll say at the onset, I'm not necessarily the most entertaining person you could have on, and so I'm hoping that my content will keep your listeners attention wrapped, but I'm not very good at entertaining people. But let's see how it goes.
Yeah, well, luckily neither are we, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Way too serious most of the time. But my first question is that 15 years ago, what inspired you to even start covering local politics in Emeryville?
Yeah, I started way before 15 years ago. I just started the Emeryville Tattler 15 years ago. And just so that people can see what we're talking about. It's Tattler, Tattler, one who tattles. It's a sort of 18th century commonly used I don't know if I'd say epithet, but descriptive word for journalism or journalists, one who tattles, a tattler. And it's since then become sort of pejorative, but I sort of like the term, and so I used it, even though it's very antiquated. So but to answer your question, what prompted me to start it was the advent of the internet, and suddenly there's a way to reach a lot of people very easily. Before that, it was by Kinko's copies and walking my dog after work and sliding my political missives underneath people's doors or under their entry mats. And the Tattler allowed me to do it much more efficiently, but it's the same thing, same idea.
Okay. And then what made you interested in Emeryville politics? What were you seeing at that time?
Okay, well, I've lived in Emeryville, as you said, since 1982, and Emeryville's a weird little town, and it's a lot of your listeners will probably recognize what I'm about to describe about this town of mine, and that is it's sort of, the politics are pretty right wing, and even more so in days previous. And I noticed that there's no real reason why Emeryville should be so right wing. I mean, it's in the center of the Bay Area. It's surrounded by Oakland and Berkeley, and those are reasonable people that live in those two towns. So why should Emeryville be so weirdly right wing? And yet it was, and arguably still is. But I was wondering, I was just baffled. Why is it my little town so right wing and surrounded by people that are much more progressive? Doesn't make any sense. And long story short, I came to realize it's an accident. it's basically an accident that it's so right wing.
Explain that. Tell me. Explain that.
That's interesting.
Okay, yeah. So, okay, as everybody, progressives know, sort of at their core, that to get into power, if you happen to be on the right wing side of the political spectrum, and you're a politician wannabe, you have to sort of engage in subterfuge, meaning you can't really let your real ideas, political ideas, be known. Versus the reason is because the Bay Area is a very progressive place. I mean, Alameda County arguably is the most progressive county in America. So if you happen to be on the right wing side of the spectrum, you need to keep that under wraps. And so
you hide it with I'm a moderate.
Yeah, they use the words like moderate, but a lot of times they'll just say the word progressive. I'm a progressive.
Oh,
and of course, you can't accuse them of lying because it's not quantified. Mm-hmm. The word progressive. But the point is that progressives have the freedom and the capability of letting their actual opinions about public policy be known. We're talking about progressive politicians that want to get elected versus more right-wing progressives. I'm sorry, I misspoke. More right-wing politicians, sometimes in the Bay Area called corporate Democrats. Well, they sort of have to keep, they have to engage in subterfuge. They have to basically trickery. They have to fool people into thinking that they are also progressive, but they have these ideas that maybe could be construed as conservative or right wing, but they're not really that. They're really progressives. And so there's this dichotomy. There's the right wing that I should say. Wait a minute. Is this right? That's right, I guess. Right. It's backwards. Right wing has to engage in subterfuge to get elected. Right wing politicians, and the left wing politicians get to relay their actual ideas. And so that's still the case and has always been the case in the Bay Area. And that's how what is commonly called corporate Democrats get elected, by confusing the voters about their actual ideas about politics. But anyway, so I'm sorry to be so long-winded to answer your question. I started the Tattler because of this condition that I've just laid out, and that I thought it was an accident that the right wing happened to be in control in Emeryville, and mostly it's a function of the fact that Emeryville is so tiny, and the corporate Democrats engaging in subterfuge could get elected, and so with no checks and balances because of no newspaper in Emeryville, they did get in power. And so we had this little right-wing community surrounded by progressive Democratic communities in Berkeley and Oakland and what have you. And so I thought, that's not really sustainable. And that's what I mean by an accident. It's just they got in power, and it's not sustainable. And with a little push, I thought push them out of there and get in actual progressive that would reflect the actual sentiment among the voters and the people of the city of Emeryville. And that's the project that I took on. I thought it would take about 10 years. And in fact, that's actually about what it took. I was remarkably accurate on that assessment of the 10-year assessment. I thought that was what.
But then it seems like it's kind of bounced back after the election of John Bowders, the corporate. I mean, truly a perfect example of a corporate Democrat. Somebody who's like, oh, I'm gay. Oh, I love biking. I want to save the earth and stuff like that. But really, when you get down to his politics and his tactics, I mean, very Republican, very pro business.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was it. Just pro business and no prisoners.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing I'd like to know about too, though. I mean, like, what were the things that were some of the dead giveaways to you that you were talking to? I mean, pretty much imposters. They're saying they're progressives, but what were their actions or their ideas that let you know early on, like, these guys are faking? They're not real. They're faking until they make it.
Good question. So I've lived in Emeryville since '82, and when I first moved here, it was the Lacoste family. And it was just old-fashioned East Coast style corruption. And it was, the Lacoste family, and it was Al Lacoste, who was the mayor of Emeryville back long time ago. Very corrupt as all AF. Oh, can I use profanity on this site?
Yeah.
By the way?
Yeah. Fuck
okay.
yeah.
Okay, corrupt as fuck. and thank you. And then his son, John Lacoste, who became the chief of police of my little town, and just when I moved to, and he was super corrupt. I mean, he's legendary. The corruption is legendary, and he ran Emeryville from a bar stool at the Townhouse Bar and Grill on Doyle Street. Yeah, and anyway, so that was the condition when I first moved to Emeryville, and this new group, so the council, of course, was controlled by the chief of police, which is, it kind of makes you look both ways and say, what? They're two separate entities, but yet that was the case. And so it's corrupt, and I guess it was sort of right wing back in the day, but more that was corrupt. Mm-hmm. We're talking about back in the day. We're talking about before, from the early '80s before, and then in response to that corruption, the Lacoste family, and specifically John Lacoste, the corrupt chief of police, was drummed out of Emeryville, and he had the feds, the FBI after him for all sorts of corruption charges. We're talking early '80s. Mm-hmm. It's all over you can look at it. You can see it all over. It's all over the internet. It's Emeryville history, and that was the Emeryville that I moved to. So what supplanted that was a new group of three council members that ran as a slate, and they were the anti-corruption slate, and they called themselves the All Emeryville Alliance, and they were in fact anti-corruption. There was no subterfuge on that, and they weren't anything other than what they said they were, which was against corruption. But as it turns out, there was one very skilled politician among that group of three, and that her name was Nora Davis, and she lived at the Watergate Apartments, and she was very skilled, and she happened to be very conservative. She was a Democrat, what we would now call a corporate Democrat, but she got in on the slate of three that were trying to drum out, the Lacoste corruption, and so she got in, and then so she ended up being like what was commonly referred to as the Queen of Emeryville.
Oh,
yeah, so running the town. Emeryville has always been run by one specific person. I mean, since I've lived here, since the early '80s. So she's kind of right wing. I mean, I would call quite right wing, and she was what's
like
good
a Dianne Feinstein kind of right wing.
Yeah, or maybe even more than that. Even she was, but of that ilk. Mm-hmm. She was what's good for business is good for Emeryville, and so we don't. How dare us question a developer, for instance, that moves to town or that wants to do a big project in our town? We should not be questioning them because one, development is good for business and therefore good for Emeryville, and two, they're very knowledgeable and good people, and why would we ever question that? So just whatever they say should go, and that's the Emeryville that I moved. That's right shortly after I moved here. That's what the town that we got, and I started. So I thought, well, I came from Boulder, Colorado. That's my hometown, and that's a progressive little. At the time, was a progressive little. It's a college town, progressive college town. Since then, now it's just turned into rich people.
Yeah.
But back then, rich white people, I should say. But back then it was a progressive college town, and so I heard this, and I thought, well, this is unacceptable. I think we can craft a better city here than what's good for business is good for Emeryville. And so I started a campaign to try to upset that paradigm.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, that's the kind of stuff that we need to be doing, but clearly the business is good for Emeryville is still basically winning.
That's true. That's true.
I mean,
all the work I've done, and we're kind of right back to where we started.
Yeah. Well, so is that when you were first kind of seeing like development Uber Alice kind of politics coming into Emeryville? Because especially later, it seems like when you like, it seemed like, so the YIMBY movement started in 2017, and it seemed like it really was already going here in Emeryville, at least what I could kind of tell from your reporting.
Yeah, certainly. But I will say this too. There is a difference between the Nora Davis vision of Emeryville, which was more old school, right wing or neoliberal. I would say the neoliberal project, which is have the government make the clearest space for business. Business is what gets.
Don't touch free markets.
Yeah, clearest space for business because business is what gets things done. That's the Nora Davis model. Well, the newer school after Nora, that sort of took over after Nora is more complex. You described it, Kevin, earlier yourself very well when you said Mr. Bowders, John Bowders, he's a LGBTQ friendly. He rides a bike, so it's sort of like. Yeah, Nora Davis would never have ridden a bike. That would have been considered like, well, that's sort of very suspiciously, I don't know what, communist maybe, or it's just not good to ride a bike. but the new pro-business council is they ride bikes and they think that gay marriage should be legal. And so that's a little different. But it's still, as far as I'm concerned, is how it impacts average Emeryville residents. It's the same story. And I'm sorry, I forgot your point. You asked me a question.
It's kind of the YIMBY takeover too. It seemed like it was already. That's why we were talking too about the Emeryville being kind of a lab for this stuff. The testing grounds for this kind of real estate takeover. To help it, especially they use the cover of affordable housing, or not even affordable housing, making housing more affordable, even though they want to build luxury apartments. It's so much more about speculation, but they can't say that.
Yes, that's the really frustrating thing in Emeryville, because when the old school conservatives were in power, that would be the Nora Davis years from 80s, 90s. The idea was business is king. What developers want to do is what we should let them do. And now it's the same philosophy, except for bike riding and gay marriage. so it's the same philosophy. And so it's extremely frustrating. So all the work that progressives in Emeryville did to replace the previous paradigm of which business should be king in Emeryville to a more, enlightened and more democratic vision of how public policy should be promulgated was replaced with what I just described, and it's extremely frustrating. And you're absolutely right. So regarding the YIMBY idea, of course the YIMBY thing, came after the Nora Davis years, but like I just described, it essentially describes the same thing, and that is clear the way for developers to have their way with public policy in Emeryville. And the thing that's like extremely frustrating about this is that Emeryville, more than all of our neighbors, since we have this right-wing history and right-wing sort of policies that have been promulgated over the decades, according to ABAG, which is the Association for Bay Area Governments, which has determines how much housing we need. There's what's called a jobs housing balance, and according to ABAG, which is supposed to be a neutral arbitration or neutral scientifically generated technique to know how much housing we need. According to ABAG, Emeryville is way beyond. We've built way more of market rate housing than we need to, and we're still, of course, still low on affordable housing. But we built way more than Berkeley, way more than Oakland, and so it just doesn't ring true that we need more market rate housing. It just doesn't ring true. And again, I will defer to the ABAG and the scientific method that they use to determine the jobs housing balance. And so we've done more than our share. So so there's that, and then there's the problem wholesale or system wide with YIMBY, which we can get into in a minute. But just realize Emeryville has built way more than its share in the Bay Area of market rate housing. Way more. Every single implementation period it's called the RENA. It's called it's an ABAG project called RENA, and it stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And Emeryville, unlike every other community, unlike Oakland, unlike Berkeley, unlike Hayward, Emeryville has exceeded the RENA required or recommended numbers of market rate housing units. And we've exceeded it every single period for decades. So we don't need more market rate housing. So this is above and beyond your problems you brought up regarding YIMBY as an entity. So I'm not going to take away from what you said that there's major problems with the YIMBY model. But above and beyond that, Emeryville has done way more than its share of providing market rate housing.
Well, and I bet it hasn't brought down rents. I bet property values are still sky high.
Yes.
It's
funny. It's funny the way that it makes it almost. You're absolutely right, and it almost makes you think like, well, maybe they're not telling us the real story.
Yeah, and see, now that was what I was about to ask, because I have to confess, I know very little about Emeryville politics. Very, very little. What do you think the motivation is if they've already overbuilt? What is the motivation to want to continue to build more? Are they I don't want to make any speculations or anything. I just to me, it sounds counterproductive. To me, it sounds counterintuitive.
I have a feeling it's foreign investment, but that's
I like to so. I mean, because you're so engaged, because I'm thinking the same thing, Kevin. But I mean, this man has actually been looking into it. Can you explain what their logic is and why that doesn't make sense?
Well, it does make sense from a bottom line standpoint. Okay, so developers, bless their hearts, they're in the business for profit maximization, and I don't blame them for that. That's why they're in business, and they're right up front about it. The whole idea is they want to return, maximum shareholder value, and they're not to be blamed for that. But insofar that they ruin communities, with gentrification and pricing people out and what have you, the litany of abuses, it's not their fault. It's the government's fault that allows them to do it. Okay, so why Emeryville? Because it's a tiny little town that gives the total green light for developers. Unlike Berkeley doesn't do that. Oakland doesn't do it. I mean, not as much as Emeryville, certainly. And so it's this little area where developers can have their way completely. And so there's a regional need for more housing. And so they do the housing in Emeryville, and so they can maximize their profits. And they don't, have no pushback from the government, who's supposed to be protecting the residents' interests or the people's interests, residents included. And so it's like a freebie. Little town of Emeryville gets dumped on by developers. And if you can say there are problems with too much density, and of course you can, That's the whole purpose of city planning, is the identification of problems associated with too much development. That's the birth of city planning is based on that. Insofar as you can make that argument, and that's a completely cogent and rational argument, you can say that Emeryville is this a place that takes up the slack for places where people are more engaged in their community, like Oakland and Berkeley. And so we're like the dumping ground. And so developers, have their way with us, and they want to do it because it's a tiny community surrounded by bigger communities, and so there's a huge amount of need for, then they can charge higher rents, and notwithstanding ideas that Kevin brought up about, international,
investment.
Investment, real estate investment corporations. Notwithstanding all that, Emeryville is the place to go if you're a developer. If you want to get your project built, Emeryville is where you go, and so that's why we've got what we've got.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
tell me if I'm too long-winded.
No, not at all. Because it sounds to me that what they're thinking is they're thinking more about tax revenue than they are about the residents. They're thinking about property taxes. They're thinking more about transfer of wealth, right?
I wish you were correct.
Oh.
No, as it turns out, no, it's not done for property taxes. Although the city of Emeryville and Alameda County gets property taxes from development in Emeryville, residential development, building of apartments. The way it's supposed to work and the way it generally does work is that the municipalities only get the taxes that it's a balance between the money that they have to spend for extra services for the new residents up to what they get in extra tax revenue, property tax revenue. It's supposed to balance out.
Right.
If it doesn't balance out, if a city is making a profit on new housing, well, then they're charging too much, and it's not supposed to work that way. It's supposed to be revenue neutral. And generally it is, because people would be outraged if the city were making profit off of it. But to the point the takeaway point is that every big new apartment project brings in a lot more taxes, true, but then it also brings in more, costs associated with that. Sewer, lateral hookups, the streets, and all the maintenance for that. The police, the extra policing, the extra firefighting, and all. So it ends up being about neutral. And I wish you were right that we were making more money off this housing, because the Emeryville would be awash in cash if we were,
right.
But we're not. It's just revenue neutral. So anyway, I'm sorry.
So it sounds like it's more about power. It's more about power than it is anything else. It doesn't even really. They don't seem to care as much about money as they do about power.
But that's a really good point. That is an excellent point. Like, why are they doing it? If they're not making more money, they being the city of Emeryville, and they're not making more money. Right. So that's an excellent point what you make. Is it about power? Well, Well, the thing is, the people giving the go-ahead to these developers are not, maybe power is sort of an abstract concept. Yeah, maybe they're getting like nice things said about them by developers, but I think it's more than that. And they need more than that, and what they need is they need to have their philosophic overview construct assuaged, meaning these people are right wingers, and they think what's good for business is good for Emeryville, and they like to assuage the desires of developers because the trickle down, like they probably, that would be like, to describe them at their best. They're hoping for a trickle down. So the wealth will trickle down, and then at worst they would be just right wing ideologues that don't care about trickle down. But I think that's what motivates them. It's not money. It's not power. It's just ideological. Like I always said for years, the two leaders of Emeryville for like 30 years were Nora Davis, who I described earlier, who was the queen bee of Emeryville, and then John Bowders, who was the king of Emeryville. If they were making money, if they were like corrupt and taking kickbacks from developers, that would be understandable. It'd be reprehensible, but it would be understandable. It'd be like, okay, I understand that. I understand why you're doing it. But there's no evidence that Nora or John Bowders, Nora Davis or John Bowders ever took kickbacks from developers. And, that's actually kind of sad.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing we're left with is that they're right-wing ideologues, that they are letting these developers shit on the community, and they're not getting anything for it. And that's, like I said, it's not understandable. It's over the top. I don't, they're right-wing ideal. I don't understand right-wing thinking. I mean, I know about it, but I don't really understand it on a visceral level.
Well, yeah, it sounds like. I mean, I've said this before on here. Right-wing ideology is so full with magical thinking. Yeah. There's a magical thinking that's taking place here, where like what they're trying to do is they're trying to confirm their ideology works, when in fact there's stagnation. So I mean, like it's not even status quo. It just sounds to me that they say bill, and so what's the end result? Nothing. So basically, you're just doing this magical thinking thing, where as long as the stagnation exists, your idea was a good idea. If things don't go up or go down, you're still correct.
Yep.
Right. Like things don't have to improve, but as long as things don't deteriorate, I'm correct. Mm-hmm. Right. That sounds like magical thinking.
Totally. All right. So Kalimah's here, so I'm going to bring him on. We have Emeryville City Council member Kalimah Priforce joining us for the conversation. It was a blog from Kalimah that drew attention to the thing that Brian is dealing with now, with the city attorney trying to block his reporting and using the law to do it, which is insane. Absolutely. And truly concerning, because that could happen to us. That could happen to anybody. How does that come about, and how did you learn about it too, Kalimah?
Oh, first, hey, nice to finally meet you, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I missed you last time. All right, go ahead, man.
Hey, are you guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks to, a lot's happened since the last time I was on the show. I mean, a lot. Let's see, the censor sanction happened. Finally, you
gonna move your
what else happened? Oh yeah, sure. Here we go. The censor sanction happened. Everything that happened with Brian, and the Emeryville Tattler. I mean, it essentially what happened is that the city attorney, during a time when Emeryville did not have a permanent city manager, started issuing all these different things, started making happen all these different things. And I think a lot of it had to do with the way the city attorney feels about not just Brian Donahue and the Emeryville Tattler exposing some of the issues that we have in city government, but that infamous punch from when Bowders is a supporter towards Brian, and that helped to take Bowders down. Right. And because you're what we see here is, I believe, what initially shifted the power imbalance that has been in Emeryville for so long towards the progressive movement, towards sort of our favor. And of course, the empire is going to strike back and doesn't want that to happen again. And that's how I've gotten sort of involved in the intricacies of standing up, not just for Brian Donahue and Emeryville Tattler, but for all for you guys, for everyone who is trying to assert their First Amendment rights to establish a free press.
Yes. And yeah, Brian, we should get into that incident when Bowders was running for supervisor for Alameda County. One of his supporters attacked you. And it did seem to hurt his reputation. Endorsements were pulled from it and everything else. But you should definitely give your side of the story on that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. I've only heard remnants of it. I haven't really gotten the full story before.
There is a blog post that I'll link, but let's hear from you directly.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for that. So first off, you're talking about John Bowders, former city council member of the city of Emeryville, and arguably the person that ran our town here for 8 years. He replaced Nora Davis, who ran the town for 30 years before him. Emeryville has that, like I was describing earlier, has this like strong person leader, dear leader. And that's a cultural affect.
Yeah, they want to bring that to San Francisco. They want to give like a mayor like untouchable powers, you know? It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's sort of anti-democratic at its core. But anyway, so John Bowders, former city council member, former longtime mayor, head of he was longtime 8-year head of the committee. Mr. Councilman Priforce can confirm the committee, that the budget committee for the city of Emeryville. And maybe we can get into that later. But anyway, so that's who he is. That's what we're talking about. He's famously a narcissist, and I'm not a PhD. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't. So my analysis or my observation of him being a narcissist is an armchair psychiatrist, but I'm not the only one that thinks it. He's well known for that in the Bay Area, for being a narcissistic. And so, he was running for. He gave up his council seat in hopes of winning a seat on the Alameda County Board of Supervisors for District 5. He ultimately lost. Very close election. Yeah, it was won by Nikki Bass. But Mr. Bowders set up a tent at a public event in Emeryville, where he was there to answer people's questions about his run for the county supervisor. So I already know pretty much everything about Bowders, but I had questions that I wanted to ask him for future Tattler stories about his run for county supervisor. And so I sat down next to him under his tent, where he was inviting people to ask questions, and that's what I did. And I was filming it as, the Tattler. My readers want to know, Mr. Bowders, what do you think about XYZ? And one of his supporters standing right next to him was having nothing of that, and so you can see the video. It's gone viral. This is back in November, and so he just hit me in the face, and so it's political violence. Come to Emeryville, and I'm not sure what anything other than that. Just guy hit me in the face. Mr. Bowders did not offer to help me. I hurt my elbow and I was flailing on the ground after having been punched in the face. And Mr. Bowders didn't offer to help me get up or anything. It was just, and so it was sort of beyond the pale. And
that says so much.
That is the event. The Mr.
So he didn't admonish the guy either. He didn't say, "Don't do that. That's bad." Oh
no,
wow.
There was nothing of that. Nothing to help me get up. I was, I was kind of. I fell over backwards after I got hit. I fell over backwards, hit the ground, and it hurt my elbow, and I was tangled up in a chair that caused me to hit the ground. Yeah, you didn't offer to help, and so that's sort of a new day in Emeryville, political violence like that.
Did anything happen to the guy? Did you press charges?
Yes, I pressed charges. What's called a PPA, a private person arrest. I pressed charges against him, and I'm not going to name his name because that case is still being adjudicated, for lack of a better term. So it's still in the court. There was an initial investigation and a determination, but now there's a second bite at the apple.
Well, I'm glad you did that. Yeah, I'm glad you did that, because some people like they think this is television. This is not television. This is real life. You don't put your hands on people. No,
it's more than putting his hands. He actually punched me.
That's what I'm saying. That's I'm being colloquial.
Yeah.
But also, this is not the first time that we're going to get into the RO they're trying to establish with you. But Councilmember Priforce, you actually had to deal with certain kind of censorship as well from the same body.
Yes, the ethics violations.
Yeah,
which is interesting when the mayor is facing this similar kind of stuff, but it's not going through the same way, not going through the process in the same way.
So go ahead. Let us know what's going on with that and how it's connected. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
taking notes.
that censure and sanction meeting was really incredible, because not only did you have Emeryville residents there, but you had people from all across the region. It was a nightmare for John Botters, who was already embarrassed because the numbers were looking already bad for him, and I think that was like the eve of his concession. But it was also bad for a lot of these sort of corporate Democrats, these who the San Francisco Chronicle keeps wanting to call them moderates, but we all know that they're YIMBYs, that they're those who have sold out to establish a status quo establishment, and so that kind of coordination of effort. And of course, when Mr. Donahue held up that sign of a tweet from one of my colleagues, wherein she uses an explusive on Twitter, and she says, well, they're going to do a censor and sanction again, and I don't have a problem with that.
Can I say it?
Yeah, say it.
Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry to interject, Mr. Priforce, Councilmember Priforce. Let me just say it since you don't want to say it, but that's fine. She called me a fuck boy, and so we have a prohibition. I've been called even worse than that. So I don't. That's fine with me. But we have a prohibition against that in Emeryville. It's called the Code of Ethics. So it doesn't bother me. Fuck boy, that's fine. But she called me that way, and that is against the Code of Ethics that she signed her name to. So she's not allowed to be doing that, and that's what Mr. Priforce, Councilmember Priforce, is talking about. I'll say the word is fuck boy. So anyway, please continue.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if you can imagine, just like the reaction right here, the reaction of everybody in the room or anybody watching is saying, "Wait a minute, how is this okay?" And him pointing out the corruption that's in city council. How is that not okay, right? And I didn't have a problem like naming names and showing, well, how is it that this is connected to that fund and that fund is connected to? So that's something that I disagree with Mr. Donahue when he said that that John Botters didn't benefit from that power that he had over Emeryville. Oh, he benefited greatly because it allowed him to build a coffer, a war chest that made almost the supervisor almost a win for him. And as you all saw from the Phoenix Project chart, he gained the most in terms of funding out of everyone, really. And so I think maybe Lauren Taylor in this recent race, but before Lauren Taylor, John Botters had gained so much from all these different connections that he made and these relationships that he formed out of being this having the presence that he had on Emeryville City Council. And so that, and I think that is, and I want to wrap up with this because I think it's really important. And why this show is so important. What you guys do is so important. It's because this fight is regional. Yeah. This fight is maybe even statewide. And that and I'm tired of people thinking that what's happening in Emeryville is too small for Oakland to consider. What's happening in Albany, what's happening in Fremont, what's happening in Alameda, that you have to understand is that those who are trying to move us out, those of us, this tech oligarchy, they are coordinating regional wise. Mm-hmm. And then they get upset and they get offended when you have activists, housing activists, tenant activists from Berkeley in Emeryville protesting the censor and sanction. When you have people from Alameda who are saying, "Hey, what is going on?" We have people from all across the region, and I think that's what I think that what is happening to Mr. Donahue is a part of that, and I've been seeing this happen. You've been seeing this use of a code of ethics, right? We're even seeing it in a Democratic Central Committee here in Alameda County, where they're now thinking about using a code of ethics in order to perhaps censure and control the behavior of one of the Central Committee members who's also differently abled. Right, and so we're starting to see this wave of democratic tyranny happening from a party that I'm a part of, and I think that what we all are doing in terms of how we all fight back is going to be so important.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I found it really fascinating because, like what you just pointed out, the Phoenix Project pointed out his connection to Empower Oakland really elevated him financially and also like I guess politically in a weird kind of way. But Empower Oakland itself is now, like, I mean, we now know is connected to, as far as we can even reach as far back as there's this thing called Swing LLC, and Swing LLC is a PAC that contributed to Empower Oakland, but Swing LLC gets most of their money from the California Republican Party. Right. So, I mean, like that why would so-called moderate, why would so-called corporate Democrats be using a shadow PAC that gets most of its money from the California Republican Party if there weren't intentions to push and swing? That's why it's called Swing LLC, to swing California right. You know what I mean? So, I mean, like, so that's, you know, like, I'm glad people are starting to see it that way too. Yeah, so let's get to what's going on with you, Brian, because this is some crazy shit, man. This is crazy.
Yeah, communication plan. What is up with this communication plan?
What the hell is that? What the hell is that?
All right. Well, first I'd like to thank Councilmember Priforce for coming on, and the council majority, the 4 members that aren't named Kalimah Priforce, have been just allied against him, and Mr. Priforce is the lone progressive on our council. The other 4 are, have made their peace with, developers and the business model of governance, corporate model, and Councilmember Priforce is more people power, and that's why I have gravitated towards him. Everyone's asking me, why do you like Councilmember Priforce so much? It's just that simple reason: people power. I've lived here since 1982, and all I've seen is just, the corporate power being assuaged. And, I will always side with those that are more interested in promoting people power, and that's Councilmember Priforce. So thank you.
Love it.
Okay, so now regarding the thing you referred to, the communication plan. This is okay. So I've been for 15 years for the Tattler, and even before that, before the Tattler, with just Kinko copies and putting notices under people's doors in the pre-internet years. I've been, appealing to my government to have more progressive sort of policies being promulgated, but it was the hiring of our current city attorney. His name is, with the unlikely name of John Kennedy. And this was, maybe Councilmember Priforce can tell me, what was it, like 3-4 years ago we hired him? Do you know, Kalimah?
Yeah, it was about 3-4 years ago.
3 or 4 years ago, we hired this guy. And we've, of course, we've always had city attorney, every city's got them. And they're supposed to be sort of co-equal power with the city manager. We have a city manager form of government, it's called. And the city attorney and the city manager both serve at the pleasure of the city council. They're supposed to be sort of like, co-equals, and they're supposed to keep each other sort of in check. But this new guy 3 or 4 years ago that was hired happened to come onto the job as a city attorney at a time when we were changing our city managers, and there happened to be a big slack time with no city manager, and so there was no check or balance to this new city attorney named John Kennedy, And so this guy has sort of become, the king of Emeryville. Runs the town, especially in the absence of a city council member that has clearly risen up to take sort of the power, like Nora Davis and after him, John Bowders. So the new guy that runs Emeryville is the city attorney, as it turns out, John Kennedy.
Oh,
so as it turns out, this guy's got a very, very thin skin, and he does not countenance journalists questioning him, and he doesn't like being held to account. But that's my job as a journalist. That's what I do with the Tattler. I hold public servants to account, especially managers at Emeryville City Halls and politicians, elected officials. I hold them to account, and nobody likes to be held to account. I don't even like to be held to account. I've never met a person that likes it. But when you sign on to a management position in a government in the public sector, that comes with the territory. And so I'm sorry, you have to accept it. And some do better jobs than others. And then it turns out this guy, John Kennedy, does a terrible job. He can't countenance it. He's got a really thin skin, and he immediately went to war against me. And I could go on and on about how the war is manifest. Let's cut to the chase for the communication plan. He cannot abide by me writing negative stories about him and the city and as a whole. And I have done negative stories about his public policy, not about him personally, but about his public policies that he's promoting. And so he concocted this thing called the communication plan, the Tattler communication plan. And it's basically a list of prohibitions, things that I can no longer do. But these are things, because he's trying to stop the Tattler. But these are things that I have a constitutional right to do. In the United States Constitution, California constitutional right to do it. Like things like he has prohibited in this communication plan, he's prohibited me from speaking with city employees after public meetings have been adjourned.
Wow.
So but clearly I have a right to do it, and he's threatened to sue me if I do speak to public employees after council meetings have been adjourned and other public meetings. And so I've been calling his bluff, and he's super, super angry about this. And the police are in my court. It took a while for them to get onto my side. It took me explaining to them about the law, the intricacies of the law. Not every cop knows every law, but I know a lot about First Amendment law, more than most cops, as it turns out. And so I got them. They're now on my side. They're not going to break the law. I'm not going to break the law. And but the city manager no longer has his police force because he threatened to have me arrested if I violated the communication plan. So he saw the Emeryville police as like his Praetorian guard. And I've taken that away from him, but he still is threatening to sue me if I violate the communication plans. And there's a law in the state of California called the SLAPP. It's SLAPP, Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation. It's a law in the state of California. You can't do that. And to even threaten a SLAPP suit is illegal. And that's where we have our city attorney right now, breaking the law vis-a-vis the SLAPP suit with his communication plan. It's over the top, crazy, undemocratic. And
I'm guessing the evil eye doesn't have its own communication plan. the rival blog.
No, they don't make the powers that be in the city of Emeryville, they being the evil eye, doesn't make the powers that be in the city of Emeryville uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So he's fine as far as they're concerned. He writes about businesses, and he writes about new food reviews and stuff like that. Stuff that he actually fulfills a good function for the city, but it's not anything that makes the powers that be uncomfortable. That's the Tattler's bailiwick.
Though he did accuse you of arson, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He hates what? Me. The editor of the news site you're talking about, his name is Rob Arias. He's the editor of the Evil Eye. That's the right wing, what I call the right wing news source about Emeryville. Yeah, he hates me with a passion. The Emeryville Tattler I call the left-wing news source. I started my news source about a little more than 15 years ago. He started his about 12 years ago. I should say, in response to the Tattler. But yeah, he hates me with a passion. Yeah, he's accused me of numerous crimes over the years. And to that, and to him and to others that on the haters, the Tattler haters that accuse me of crimes, I have the same thing I always say to all of them. If you see a crime, you can call the police.
Yeah.
And so when you see me committing a crime, if you see me committing a crime, call the police, and then I'll get arrested, and then you'll have your vindication. But it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And so I guess the funny thing about it is it's sort of like Mr. Arias and other haters, Tattler haters, are like saying that the Emeryville police are a bunch of like Keystone cops or whatever. Mr. Arias can see the crimes I'm committing, he says, but the cops can't see it, I guess. And so the cops are stupid, blundering idiots, I guess.
How do they make it up, though? How do you make it up? I mean, how do you?
The arson thing is very funny.
I committed arson. I burned down a building twice. But interesting. So you should tell the police, Mr. Arias. Tell the police, and then I'll get arrested, and then you'll have your vindication. But they haven't arrested me. I've never been arrested. For 15 years, I've been accused of committing crimes by the right wing, and I've never been arrested. Why is that?
Yeah.
Scott,
Scott's so funny. Yeah.
Allow me to chime in. Okay. All right. So I'm taking it from not just as a resident in Emeryville, but of course, as a council member. There's definitely a rivalry between the Emeryville Tattler and the Evil Eye, right? And so, I mean, Brian and Rob have this beef, right? But here's the interesting thing: when I was running as a city council member, and the Democratic Central Committee, the head of the Democratic Central Committee, Ego Tregub, and many others, they suggested that as a Democrat, I would need to get buy-in from the endorsements from current council members, and so I reached out to these current council members, and in one of those meetings, one of the things that they asked me to do was, well, can you help us shut down the Evil Eye and the Emeryville Tattler?
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. Kid you not. And and of course, now that I think would have worked for somebody who, let's say, is so eager to be an elected official. I mean, I ran because the tenant board wanted me to run for office. So if I was power hungry, maybe if I I didn't have a professional background that included an award from the White House, as an Obama champion of change, or maybe if I wasn't an Equine Green Fellow, anything that says, well, you know what, let me take a look at this. So I looked up the stories from the Emeryville Tattler, and I looked up the stories from the Evil Eye, and I said, well, wait a minute, these are the only sort of forces that are actually at least shedding some light as to what is going on, and they almost act as historians for the city, right? If you want to know what's going on in Emeryville, reading both, and of course they're both are very different. It's really important to have both. But as going into the city council, meeting Brian, meeting Rob, my whole thing is, okay, I know that there's this beef, right? And it's real beef. The beef is real, but we have to work together. We all need to work together, and I think that's also indicative of what's happening regionally. Like, different progressive groups don't like one another because this person used to date that person, or this person used to work for that person, or this person, that sort of thing, right? And I'm like, look, this is how the enemy wins. It's because good is divided, and
right.
so I've done as much as I can to have it so that the two don't report as much negative attacks on one another, because it's obvious it's coming from a place of bias, and they use that every time Brian Donahue says something or does something that sheds light onto what's happening in our government. Some YIMBY somewhere, or some abundance Democrat or neoliberal will pull out an Evil Eye article and use that to attack Brian, right?
Wow.
And I think and I bet you if Rob Arias wrote more stories critical of them, they would do the same thing. They would grab a title article and they would do that. And so I've tried my best to see that we all are sort of working together, because I think that it not for any particular political agenda and not for my own political agenda. It's just that we owe it to the people who we serve to create that transparency that we believe they need to make informed decisions.
Oh, go on, Brian.
Oh, I just wanted to push back against Mr. Priforce just a little bit. I mean, just so everyone knows, there's two news sites about Emeryville. The Tattlers, which has been an extant for over 15 years, and then the Evil Eye, which has been around for like 12 years about. There is a huge difference between the two. Mm-hmm. My news site, the Emeryville Tattler, is not monetized. It never has been. I've never taken a penny of money from anybody. Versus the Evil Eye, Rob Arias is the editor of that. That's heavily monetized, and also he gets underwritten from corporations. But more importantly, you can see a major editorial difference between the Evil Eye and the Emeryville Tattler in like the one topic that is like very astutely points out the differences, and that would be the Emeryville minimum wage ordinance. The Emeryville Tattler it came out very much in support of it, and the Evil Eye came out very harshly against it. So is it good for a community to have a right-wing news site and a left-wing news site? I would say yes. It's good to have both sides. But insofar that Mr. Priforce just made it seem like as if the two sites are, sort of on the same side. No, they're absolutely not. One's left-wing, one's right-wing. Emeryville Tattler is a journalism activism on the left-wing side, and the the Evil Eye is just the opposite. It's journalism activism on the right-wing side, underwritten by corporations and with a pro-corporate sort of mentality. But I don't want to take away his legitimacy. That's fine to have that. Like I said, he does some good stories. But one other thing I will say before I let this go, I'll say the words in the title and right here, the Evil Eye. I just said it. if you invite Mr. Arias, the editor of the Evil Eye, on your site ever, I don't know, I kind of sort of doubt you would, but if you were to ask him, what's the name of that Mr. Donahue's, he's the editor of what news site? He won't say the words.
Weird.
I know, it's amazing. He will not say the Emeryville Tattler. He will not say it. You can go.
That sounds very immature. That's
it's sort of like I don't know if you go on an airline, and you ask about a different airline, to one of the flight attendants. They'll call it. They won't say the name. They'll say a different carrier or alternate carrier. They won't say like United Airlines or American Airlines.
So ridiculous.
Well, no, I just can't believe there's somebody actually accused you of setting the building on fire twice. I just like that.
He accused me of it twice publicly.
He set the building on fire.
Oh my God!
I know publicly. He told the ATF, the ATF and the FBI and the Emeryville police that I'd set the building on fire. He said you should look at Brian Donahue. He wrote a negative story about the building in question. It was a big project that had all these problems from a public, from a perspective of, how it affected the neighborhood. This big apartment project, and so because I was critical of the project, I must have set the fires.
I'm sorry, I could never take anybody seriously. Okay, well, we're up to the hour point, so I just wanted to say, what Doomloop Dispatch is really about ultimately is hyper local community engagement. Yes. Like we a major part of what we do is we're not only trying to reach out to the people who are behind the story, but we're always trying to figure out ways that our community can actually help the people, assist the people. Right. So, I mean, coming from both of your perspectives, what can we do as citizens in order to, this is definitely First Amendment struggles here. So what can we do as citizens to help you both in your First Amendment struggles?
Kalimah?
Well, one of the things that, and I think that Brian made a really great point about the Tattler, because some of the remarks that were coming from the court hearings that we've been in so far was that, well, when Mr. Donahue aggressively pursues someone, is asking the question, well, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't this happening? Why isn't that happening? Oh, well, that should be considered like paparazzi like behavior. No, it's not, because the paparazzi, there's financial incentives for that, and Brian Donahue, what's really important is that, and why what all of you all do as journalists, in terms of local journalism, is that many of your stories are motivated by sources, and you protect your sources. And so Brian is just at that vanguard of asking that question, but you don't know where that question really is coming from. And so, and I think that that's really important, is that that Brian continue to do his work, that the Emeryville Tattler exists, that all of our local journalists exist, who are trying to protect and support the public. We have a May 22nd hearing in Oakland that may be the that may determine what happens, whether or not the city is granted this restraining order, this sort of permanent restraining order against Mr. Donahue, or if it's vacated. And so what we're asking is for people to show up as witnesses, to not only talk to how the Emeryville Tattler has amplified a news story that connects to them personally, but in terms of the free speech in general, how important it is, especially we're in this age of fascism and this age of many of our rights being taken away.
Yes. That's really great, people. Oh, did you want to say something, Brian? Or you?
Well, I just add on to that. So the court case that Councilmember Priforce is speaking of is the step that the city attorney took after the communication plan that we talked of earlier, where that didn't shut down the Tattler. So he's looking for another way to shut down the Tattler. And so he went the next step, which is to try to do a restraining order in a court of law against me. And suffice to say, it's, we're about ready to have our third hearing before a judge on this. And just so everybody knows, if the city attorney is successful, it'll be and gets his restraining order against me and recognized by the court, it'll be, that's a major precedent for journalism in the Bay Area and beyond. So it's a precedent-setting ruling, possibly. But as I see it, it's no matter what happens, the Tattler wins, because if I win and the judge rules against the city attorney in favor of the Tattler, then I win, obviously. And if I lose, I still win in a way, because that's a huge Tattler story that the government of the city of Emeryville, I know, I'm serious, it's a huge story. The government could not countenance or cannot countenance a journalist, holding them to account. So look at the lengths they'll go to try to silence journalists that are trying to get the story about malfeasance and what have you.
If you lose, it's a much bigger story. If you lose, it's much bigger. I'd
rather win. I would.
Yeah, of course you would rather win. Yeah, of course.
But if I lose, it's good. It's good as well. Yeah. Either way.
Agreed.
And this brings me to my original point that truly Emeryville is the lab for a lot of this kind of tactics that are coming out. These government, you're seeing these local government takeovers, and look at what they're doing, looking how they're wielding their power, and this is the kind of stuff they want to bring to San Francisco. And if they succeed in San Francisco, you're going to see it as a model of what's going on. So I want all our readers, all our audiences, I know Emeryville's known as the rottenest city, it's it's got a bad reputation, and you might not think about it. You might think like, oh wow, that's where the IKEA is, whatever. Pay attention to what's happening in Emeryville, because
That's right.
it's you're gonna see strategies be developed there, you know, and the fascism take over. So thank you guys so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate
this was
you
a
both.
fantastic episode. We're gonna keep following this story for sure, especially this lawsuit. We got to see what happens, you know. We got to follow, because that could mean so much for just all the little journalists like us who just want to inform our communities.
Absolutely.
So that was another episode of the Doomloop.
We need to be like this, journalists.
Yes. Yeah. If you ever want to, we can. I'm all down for, like, you know, holding hands session, you know, in front of the city council.
Let's link arms. Let's link those arms.
Exactly.
I got big props for Mr. Miller and Mr. Jones, both of you. Big props. You guys are doing the yeoman's work, and I really appreciate what you do.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot, man. We're just, you know, we're just trying to keep journalism alive, real journalism alive, you know, just like you are, you know. And please follow us on all the socials, people, and support our Patreon. We could always use the help, you know. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well, you know. Keep busting up those numbers. That's help. Yeah, love it. Thank you so much. And hopefully you should start a YouTube, Brian, man. Just get out there and start.
I actually have a YouTube channel. It's called the Emeryville Tattler. People, it's just unrelated videos, but yeah, you know, you can see some stuff on my YouTube channel. It's called Emeryville Tattler.
Check them out.
Yeah, I will make sure to link to that in the comment section.
I don't put a lot of content there, but there's some.
Yeah, totally. And well, as we always say, Scott,
keep fighting the good fight.
Thanks. Have a wonderful weekend, guys.
Yeah, y'all.